on August 13th, 1920, Marcus Mosiah Garvey introduced the 54 Declarations of Rights of Negro Peoples of the World. In those declarations, we basically declared the treatment that our people were receiving worldwide, not just in any particular corner of the world, but he felt that these conditions were consistent everywhere that he went. So they had a Declaration of Rights, and that's the second requirement. The third requirement is a flag. And I'm sure you all are aware of the red, black, and green flag.
That's right.
But it's not just a symbol that we use for pride or symbol to let people know, that we are our own people. But it actually represents a nation. It represents a government. Although I must be honest, one of the requirements of nationhood is land, and we don't have, I can't say right now that we have a landmass that we can call the UNIA-ACL. That's one of the things that we're working on. The fourth requirement is a constitution. And August 31st, 1920, the Constitution was released to the people. And in that Constitution, that's where we basically outlined how the government would run, how it would function, and what the leaders' responsibilities would be. And the last requirement was recognition from other governments. And we know from, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Tony Martin, but he was a historian of,
Yes.
He was a historian of UNIA-ACL.
Race first.
Race first, yes sir, that's his book.
I got you.
But he documented that we've already completed all of these 5 requirements, and our government still stands to this day. The only problem is we don't have the people to run the government. And that's part of the reason why I'm here. Garvey teaches us that the greatest weapon used against the Negro is what he said, is disorganization.
Right.
So it's our job everywhere we go to organize our people. We believe that the solution, although it's not easy, we don't believe it's difficult either. We think it's very simple. All it is just organizing our people. When I was back there, I just did some quick math. There's about 20 people in this room. If we had the ideas of a collective economy of $10 a month, we could raise $2,400 a year with just these 20 people.
That's right.
There are over 45 million of our people just in the United States alone, over 1 billion of our people worldwide. So we just believe that once we organize our people, a lot of the solutions that we discuss or think about, they'll just come naturally once we start to pool our resources together. So that's all I really wanted to say. As my brothers out here said, our strategy is race first. We don't believe that anything should come above your race. And let me preface that. I know I'm standing in the church. One of the things that I misunderstood when I came into the UNIA was that concept of race first. I was raised Baptist Christian, and we believe, I was raised God first. So that kind of contradicted some of my beliefs. But under the UNIA and under Garveyism, what I've learned is that if the God that I pray to doesn't look like me, I'm probably under oppression. So our race and who we are must extend beyond everything that we do, even to the God that we pray to. That's all I have. Thank you, everybody.
There you go.
I guess you wasn't finished.
Garvey would be proud of you, brother. You did that well.
Did that great, man. Let's give our discussion panel a round of applause. And we're gonna go into a little break, and then after that we're gonna go into a question and answering period where we're gonna get into a group discussion. So we're gonna flow into this by our drums, and we're gonna take a break, we'll get some water. You guys come back and we'll do a question and answer.
Ashe.
All right. Beautiful again, beautiful. Let's give ourselves a round of applause again. Next up, we're gonna have a powerful speaker. They're gonna let us know about what's going on in the Congo. Brother Kwame from Friends from the Congo. Come on up with us.
Greetings and love, family.
Greetings.
Brother Kwame.
Brother Kwame.
Good. It's good to be here on African Liberation Day or any day for that. Sorry I'm late, but we were trying. There's so many events today, man.
That's right.
They're up at 4 o'clock this morning. So I want to. Well, first of all, Zaire.
Yep.
Shoot, I need to give you this.
Oh, that's right.
Wow. What's that?
Yeah, we got to study our people.
What's that?
And that's one of the points of the African Liberation Day, right? You understand it. It's to make that reconnection. In a way, it's like libation, isn't it? We got to make that connection, and we got to move the struggle forward. Like how Brother Zaire said, my name is Kwame. I hail from Guyana. That's my wife Donna over there, my grandson. Y'all probably know, some of you probably know Zamir, because that's Mama and Jerry's grandson, Vigo's son. So, we're all here. We're bringing her in the room too. And I have a challenge today, because I was trying to there's a brother in St. Vincent and the Grenadines from an organization called the National Society for People with Disabilities. As you know, they just went through a tremendous environmental challenge with the volcano, and lovingly community movement builders decided that they want to help support their brothers and sisters. And isn't that the whole point of a Pan-Africanism, right? It is about solidarity. It is, like Dr. King said, what do I want to be remembered for? I stopped to help someone else, right? So the whole point of the Ma'afa was to divide us, to set us against each other. And you would appreciate that. That's why Malcolm, for instance, did speak about the fact that the Congo, if you don't understand what's going on in the Congo, you're not going to understand what's happening in Mississippi. If you don't understand that they were cutting our hands off in the Congo.
That's right.
Y'all know what that reference is to, right?
Yes.
Why were they cutting our hands off in the Congo?
Because they weren't working the rubber plantations fast enough.
Yeah, yeah. And as a result of that, what was all that rubber gonna go for?
Tired.
Tires, which was to launch what? Launch the modern industrial age. If you think about it,
Yeah.
the vehicle was key, right? So in a lot of ways, this whole modern industrial complex, this whole global economic system rests on our blood. A blood sacrifice
That's
paid
right.
by African people long before you had the Holocaust in Europe. You had the killing of some 12 million or something Congolese. But
Right.
think of how
That's right.
many Africans died in the Ma'afa. That's why this African liberation war is critical. Because that's how we honor our ancestors. But we don't only do it today. We live Pan-Africanism, right?
That's right.
Right.
So how do we do that? Some people criticize and say, you're still under fire in the Congo. The African command is still there, right? Rwanda is still creating havoc, pressuring, stealing the coltan and the diamonds from the Congo. So what, how does it really matter what we do? How can you help? How can you do Pan-Africanism right now, today? We do Pan-Africanism is personal. So when you stop to help a brother and sister, when you share a book, when you share the knowledge, when you have the intergenerational dynamic, when you listen to the music, when you hear the vibrations, that probably some of which came from the Congo-Angola basin, because most of us came out of there.
That's right.
So when you think about Brazil, where our people are also suffering, or Ferguson, or like I said, Texas is one struggle, right? And that's the point. That whatever you do, once you come from that awareness, that we're rooted in the cradle of humanity, which is Africa, and this, our concept of Pan-Africanism has to do with humanism,
Yes.
in that we recognize the inherent worth of humanity. We also, so our ideology is about humanism, right? And politically, it also challenges this question of division, because the Ma'afa divided us, right? And you look at the African continent now, what is it? It's divided, right? So the whole point of Pan-Africanism is for each of us to work towards an African super state to defeat the empire. If you're not for an African super state, how can you say you're a Pan-African? So those colonial borders gotta go. I like my flag, I'm from Guyana. But hey, like Garvey said, he's not gonna give up a whole continent for a country. Much love to Jamaica, but there's a bigger picture here.
That's right.
All right. So and I just want to say here, because we're standing in this land, right, which is brothers and sisters born here in Babylon, right? But we're also standing on the land of who? Who's here long before the Europeans came?
Indigenous.
Indigenous people. And this is the start of what? Trail of Tears, right? Right? And you think, so when they're talking about the fact, big respect, much suffering happened in the Imperial War in 1945, but long before the Europeans started doing that to themselves, they were doing that to us.
That's right.
Right? So I'm sure, community movement builders and several others recognize that our ancestors always thankful, always gracious, always noble, would have much respect for the indigenous people. But we can't walk on other people's blood and bones and stolen land without recognizing them.
Right.
I want to make them up. I'm rambling a little because I'm hoping that Zaire, I'm going to ask you to see if you can reach Brother Terrence whilst I talk. And then we can see if there's some way. I'm dialing his number, see if he answers.
Okay.
And see if he has a message that we could share. So I just want to share this just briefly for us, Friends of the Congo, our work. And is anybody not familiar with the struggle of the Congo right now?
I'm not familiar with it.
You're not familiar with it, right? Who else? What question you might have?
Give an update of what's currently happening. So
What's currently happening?
Really has no idea. No.
Okay. All right. So, if you think about the Congo in a kind of Western imperialist, oppressive educational system, you will quite rightly think, like I mentioned, the slaughter of African people. Is this thing on?
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay, cool. It's a problem. Keep So if you think about it, right? Like they always want to capture our history within a particular imperial colonial discussion, right?
Right.
This is
Right.
kind of dehumanizing. And I like when Mama A.C. Willis said, well, how long is colonial history? Like this long, right? How long do you think is the history of the world and the African history? Like this, right?
Right.
So long before the European invasion of Africa, we had our civilization. They claimed they were coming to civilize us. Y'all heard of the Shango bones?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's about,
It's a measurement device, right?
yeah.
Counting device, right?
Yes. So it's one of the first,
Shango bones.
one of the first calculators. when you
Yeah,
think about it,
calculator.
right? So I'm thinking, how could you do the pyramids? How can you build the Great Walls of Zimbabwe if you weren't doing
That's right.
physics?
That's
If you
right.
weren't doing geometry?
That's
If
right.
you weren't doing astronomy? And the Dogon people, but I don't know, you guys know, right? So what I'm saying is, the Babylon system, the education is violent, right? So, India, and it's a trick because it's so seductive. As you get into it, it gives you these rewards, right?
Right.
So you become whatever. No, big respect to the education struggle. Don't get me wrong. Don't go home, you young people, and tell your parents that. Don't worry about it. No, go ahead and get your PhD and then tear the system up.
That's right. Yeah.
It's, one of the questions that keeps coming up is, well, not everything in the system is bad. Are you saying that I'm a sellout because I'm in the system? Are you saying there's no good cops? Well, in the conversation we had this morning, comrades were like, well, listen, you might be a good person, but if you're in a gang, you're a gangster. I love it. You know, but when you put on that uniform, I have friends and family that's cops, right? And so what I'm saying is one of the things that we have to know, like Kwame Ture, we have to know who our enemies are.
Right.
We gotta know who our friends are. Or the system will have us bouncing around.
That's right.
We gotta know who our allies are.
That's right.
The
So
role
the
of white,
mask.
the role of white and other allies is what? What do you think the role, let me ask you if you don't mind, what do you think the role of allies is?
To inform people who don't understand.
Right, because think about it, if I have a child, if my son or grandson goes over to the neighbor's house and beats them up and does all kinds of terrible things, is it up to my neighbor to correct that person? What's the conversation that's happening around my table
Right.
at night?
Right.
So I'm saying that in a lot of ways, a lot of us recognize we welcome the work of allies that's so important. But you gotta tell your brother, sister, mother, father, don't do that.
Right.
Right.
like when we do something wrong, it's like the whole black race is that. Well,
Yeah.
you think so the role of allies is critical. And so it was heartening to see some people in the Jewish community standing with the Palestinian people last weekend.
Wow.
It's heartening to see that because it's up to for their own salvation. So what Africans are doing is giving the white supremacy system a chance to redeem itself.
Basically.
It's actually an opportunity for you because it's your problem.
Right.
It's not like it's done. It's not us that's toxic. You know, it's not us that's toxic. But therein lies the problem. Because maybe there's some anxiety about that. You know, we don't put it, but if you're worried about your own survival and you're worried about something that's happened before that you might be compromised, then you're going to be really afraid of somebody else. So this is just to come home. The question of the Congo asks that it's a chance to heal,
Right.
to do what Asar and Asara said, to put the pieces back together, right? And so right now, and I wandered away from the question because I was hoping we would get brother out. Did he answer?
Send a text.
Oh, he sent a text. Okay. Oh, we just. I'm gonna see if he calls. Could we put it to Mike? Anything we would do?
We'll try that. Yeah. We got the mark.
So, why do you think, this question of solidarity, why do you think it's important, or we would think that here are these people with disabilities in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, what's that got to do with our war? They're getting help from the government, right? What's that? Hey, Brother Terrence, I'm here at the event. One of the things is the people who are most vulnerable, who are most vulnerable to the oppressive system, aren't those the ones that we got to put in front?
Right.
Aren't those the ones we got to do that in order to make the circle unbroken? We could you know, we could be out front, we could be clear with the revolution, we could be armed, we could know capoeira, and we could have all kinds of stuff. But if grandma don't have it,
Right.
or if your 4-year-old or 5-year-old child, or your 6-year-old child misses the bus, and they gotta walk home at 2 o'clock in the morning,
Ugh.
all of us are vulnerable. See, that's how the enemy will get you. They're not gonna go, well, actually they did go after the biggest, strongest person to beat them up. But typically what they can do is because they're so, such language, I would use the word evil, they'll go after your folks that are vulnerable. Like we had in a situation in New York where somebody went to my friend's kindergarten school and told his daughter, tell your dad, he was trying to set up a business and it was clashing with, you know, the mob kind of does the thing with laundry and garbage. And it's, tell your dad we stopped by the school. 4-year-old daughter. You get the message?
Wow.
Right.
The system is Babylon. Brother Terrence. Hello? Yeah, let me see if you can.
Put it down toward the, yeah, you're down at the bottom should be your on speaker, put it on speakerphone. And then it should be the microphone under the bottom of the phone. Unless it's an
Terrence, go
iPhone.
ahead.
Okay. Well, let me say good afternoon to all who is gathered today. Thank you on behalf of the National Society of Persons with Disabilities for the work that you are doing, not just for keeping our heritage alive as a nation or as a black nation, but for also the persons who are otherwise forgotten or get lost in all that is happening. Thank you for supporting us. And we just want to say that we hope that this is the beginning of many great things to come as we all strive to fight to help the ones that we love and keep dear to us. So thank you again for supporting us, and definitely, because like if I can share just a brief story with you, just a couple of months ago when our Soufre erupted, there was a person who was in a wheelchair, and with all the frantic movement and trying to find safety, they actually forgot the person in a wheelchair, and I can testify to 2 stories like that. And sometimes we know in chaos, it's self-preservation is what we think about. So that I think is what really happened, where people are trying to preserve their own lives and forgetting that persons with disabilities actually have lives as well. And so it is when you hear those stories, these are the things that make you stop and think, not just as a person with a disability, but as a person who is there, who's been supporting and who's been caring for others for a very long time. It is saddened, but it is the reality of our situation. And until we can get the word out that all lives are important and people get to understand that these are the things that are happening, nothing will change. So I thank you again for supporting us, and I thank you definitely for keeping our black heritage alive.
All right, thank you, Brother Terrence. You rescued me, because if you didn't show up, I'd be in trouble. Thank you so much. And love to the family. I have much respect for all the work you're doing.
Thank you. You as well. Have an awesome time, my brother.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Wow.
Oh, sure.
That actually was what I was hoping to talk to you about. But just briefly to the Congo. So, I just want to say, in relation to people with disabilities, in 2016, you know, the war's been going on for a while, but there was an attack, and several people got wounded, maimed, etc. One of the survivors of that attack, among so many others, the sister, they put together a documentary movie called Downstream to Kinshasa. So if you could look, it's online. Downstream to Kinshasa. It speaks about some people who survived that attack, traveling to Kinshasa to plead their case. I'm going to leave it at that. How the people that need our help in the Congo, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And one other documentary I'd like to tell you all about Has anyone not heard of the documentary called "We Must Pray the Devil Back to Hell"? Heard about it? Have you seen it? What's it about?
I've heard the name. I've heard it as
Okay.
a young, as a child, young.
Yeah, actually, I think
Vaguely.
they actually showed it here in Atlanta. What happened is you remember the battles in Liberia and Sierra Leone and that, right? It's just terrible because you had a lot of contradictions. You had the progressive community challenged by the fact that some of the people, it wasn't clear, but we knew it was diamonds and the exploitation. But what happened is the women went on a strike, and I don't know where they weren't given favors no more, doing their motherly duties, and also food. And they said, you know what, you men are messing this up. And they actually, it's because of those women, look at that documentary, that forced the rebel forces, backed up by the Western imperialists. Because remember, oftentimes when we were fighting each other, you just stop on one day, what's up with this? Is there something
That's
inside,
right.
or there's something in the atmosphere?
Mm.
Might be, right?
Mm.
So they had to fight against the men in their family, the men on the street, the gang that are armed. We don't make the arms neither in Harlem or and the international actors. The international community was about to back out of the discussions on bringing peace, and the women said, "We're not going to leave." They were in Accra, I think, in Ghana, negotiating for days, and the rebel forces wouldn't come together. And the international community, all these actors, they paid a lot of money to negotiate. They decided, you know what, we need to come back to the table. The women said, no, you're not going. And they forced them to stay. And the international community moved, and the bandits moved. That's why they said they prayed the devil back to hell. They kicked him out. So I just want to say that Pan-Africanism works, solidarity works. When we stand up, the Babylon will fall.
So I want to say the person that came to speak was from the National Society of Persons with Disabilities, and that's where a lot of our mutual aid is going, because they work with people with disabilities in the Grenadines. Solidarity to help those that need help, so we can help each other. So at this time, we're going to open up the floor for any questions.